And she led the class in her usual inspirational, personal, emotional method, deeply founded on faith and her knowledge of the Dharma. And I thought, wow, this is how this is supposed to be taught. The following week, Greg Historian, extremely strong intellect, well-read, well-knowledged, strong faith, proceeded to discuss the Dharma with me in a totally different way. Thought that's how it was supposed to be. Next week, you're going to meet Jesse Chung, and Jesse Chung is a gentleman of science, and he explains Buddhism from a scientific perspective. It is definitely different than what we all will do. But I will suggest to all of you that there are some people you click with, some people you don't. Learning opportunities exist with everybody and everything, not just those you have an affinity for immediately and those that you don't. So I would ask, just sit down, flow through, and listen to what everybody has to say and move forward from there. I also, when I started giving my first facilitation or classes, I tend to come from a business background and would sit down with PowerPoint presentations and say, this is my introduction, this is my body, this is the body of proof, this is the conclusion. And I firmly believe that's how these talks should be. I once came down from my first Dharma talk from a visiting master and sat down and heard pearls of wisdom, but there was no, in my mind, no string to these pearls of wisdom. I missed that structure. I lacked that structure. I spent half the Dharma talk frustrated because I couldn't, where's your introduction? Where's your body? Where's your conclusion? And then you sit down and you think of these pearls of wisdom and you think of what you learned, and then you think about what you lost, because I was so wrapped up in this round and round and round of how things should be, how they shouldn't be. Venerable Manyi repeats often and very wisely about living in the present moment. And it is absolutely a critical thing, and I'll touch on it several times during the presentation. It truly is an amazing opportunity and such a contrast in all the styles. As we look around us, we realize that all of us have something to tell other people. I firmly believe we are all teachers and students all the time. It's up to us whether we open our ears and our minds to those lessons. But it truly is an opportunity. We can certainly close our minds and sit down. I think that's one of the things, or biggest challenges I have against distractions like video games and things like this. And I won't pick on what anybody's passion may or may not be. But when you seek searching for inspirations and seek things that allow you to grow as an individual and more look towards things that just pass the time in a pleasant way, and you understand, is there growth or is there not growth, it really does answer some questions. When you look at things, as we look at one of the 5 precepts, which is no intoxicants, there's a variety of reasons we can talk when we get into that chapter in reference to it, but a number of the intoxicants essentially leave you there treading water in life and quite content with where you are at that point in time. I'll say you're staying still, sometimes you're going downward, but puts you in a position where there is no forward progress at that stage. So I think that's something that we all need to be concerned with and contemplate as we look at the society around us and where it's going at this point in time. In Buddhism, we learn that our happiness is our own responsibility. But many times in society, we're surrounded with aspects of, always it seems people want to be on the sidelines. They want to be following something. They don't want to lead. They don't want to be controlled. They want signposts throughout their lives. Not so much from, I would point out, something like the Dharma, which puts you in a position where you can look at it and then be challenged by, I need to go in one direction or another, but literally told, do this, do that. So I think it's something that we really need to be aware of, that our happiness is our own responsibility. And from a Buddhist perspective, that is something that is never going to change. To truly see ourselves for who we are, to understand that responsibility is ours, that nobody is going to come down with a magic wand and grant us these things. And I think that that's something that's that's crazy. And I think the other thing that's challenging is many people who talk about these things are frustrated because they have no control of the outcome at that point. And yet at the beginning of making that decision to follow, rather than follow your own self, to follow somebody else, you essentially abdicate control and give up control in that decision. A little bit of the paradox. Our television is filled with it these days. Circumstances where you watch and people can see and say, I guess I must be okay because that person has it worse than me. Reality shows, Jerry Springer, Maury Povich, all these shows that are out there watched by so many people who can sit there and laugh at it and say, well, I must be okay because then somebody else is going to be worse off than I am. So just things to be aware of. So with these points to consider, we'll start our journey specifically on Buddhism. So as we look towards it, I tell you what you already know. And this is an aspect that will come out throughout from a Buddhist perspective. I'm human. I'm certainly not perfect. I do not live a perfect Buddhist life. I work very hard to follow a practice and follow a path. I fail in many areas. I won't stand up here and list my shortcomings, but I assure you, each and every one of us has challenges we face in our life. We are not perfect. We need to realize that those around us face challenges regardless of how they may be, they may say, they might not say as to what's going on in their life. But we are solidly in a position where we need to accept our own challenges and realize that everybody around us that we're running into is not perfect. If they were perfect, they would be a Buddha. And as much as it's tremendous that we're all here studying Buddhism, nobody, myself included, is a Buddha at this point in time. But that does not mean that there are not lessons that we can act at that point. And that does not mean that we don't treat ourselves with compassion and others with compassion as well. So when I ask you to consider the Dharma, I look at what's termed the living Dharma. One of the things we look at from humanistic Buddhism, which is what we teach here at Fo Guang Shan, what we practice here at Fo Guang Shan, and that is Buddhism in the real world. That is in every day. We do not believe that it is a good idea to sit in a cave and just meditate and you will reach enlightenment at that time. It's a matter of putting yourself in the real world with the challenges we face daily in the real world and moving ahead from there. So I think that that's really important that we consider. So how to study Buddhism? Most of you have the book. Seems pretty straightforward. Let's just read the book and I guess we'll all live happy lives. I think that's one of the misconceptions that we face. This isn't a cooking class. This isn't an area where if you do 1, 2, 3, you're going to end up there. The Dharma is essentially a series of signposts. It is information that you take, that you embody, you reflect, you contemplate, and then you put into practice yourself. It is the action of that practice, of which meditation part of it, that puts you in a position to remove the suffering from your life, to make you enlightened and aware of what will lead you in the right direction. The first class, for those of you that were here, I think most of you that were here, taught by Venerable Man Yi, she covered a tremendous amount of ground, and there were a lot of words of wisdom that she mentioned. I hope everybody had an opportunity to reflect on them. She covered a tremendous amount of different aspects of Buddhism, but everything was very much along the same lines. And again, I talk about it from a living Buddhism point of view. It's taking the words that you hear in here, and it's one of the challenges that we really do face. We sit down in this class, we hear all these good things, we hear the way we should live our life, we think, yeah, that sounds good, that's the way we should be doing it. When we leave the class and go out into the real world, or go into the workplace, and somebody cuts us off in traffic, somebody makes us mad, a family member does the same old thing that they always do, and what happens? And very often we react the same way. We come back to the temple, all of a sudden we're Buddhist again. Thinking a certain way, acting a certain way. Again, the key really is to take these learnings to change your life and the way that you hold yourself and act moving forward. And that literally is the difference. Nobody is the judge of yourself and how you do things other than you yourself. And that's a critical, critical point to consider. Remember, always have compassion for yourself, always have love for yourself, but by all means, understand where you are. We're in control of our own actions. Are we doing right? Are we doing wrong? Are we moving forward on the path? Are we falling behind? And I mention all these generalities rather than going straight to the four reliances or the states of mind as to how we're going to study Buddhism, because I think it's absolutely critical to get a foundation of where we are, who we are, and what we are moving forward, so that we have a very real view of what we're doing. Realize the choices we're making. So we all decide what we're going to do on a Saturday night. What does that involve? It could be, do you talk kindly to those around you? Do you offer help to those around you? Do you put yourself in a position where you're going to go out to drinking or to a club? Or what are you going to do this evening? Is it going to be in line with Buddhist following, practice, or will it be the same old path? And that to me is absolutely critical, because it is the real aspect of looking at yourself. You have to be real. You have to understand your true person. It's said that ignorance is bliss. And very often you run into people who will follow a certain path and they seem to get away with things scot-free. But quite literally, there is a challenging time, and I find when people first come for the Dharma classes, they come with these perceptions and with these perspectives and with the religious training that you've had throughout your life. And you suddenly hear new concepts in different directions and different ways to go. And I find a lot of people, not out loud, but mentally, they go through the yes, but situation. I'll take this, that I can do, that I'm not too comfortable about doing, that I don't want to give up. I won't go through the shopping list of what we all do and what we all consider, but the critical point here is that we do consider them and we do understand that those choices and those actions are ours. So I think that that is critically important. There is a very learned individual, and Jan, you can correct my pronunciation, Walpala Rahuli, very good, who wrote a great book called What the Buddha Taught. One of his main teachings was to open your mind. One of the terms that we do use here is to empty your cup. I talked about the perspectives that we all come in here with. The challenge for most of us is, if I put a cup up here, filled it full of water, and I kept pouring water and giving it more new water, it can't get in the cup because it's already full. There is a challenge here to all of you in the upcoming classes to empty your cup. I'm not asking you to accept everything that's said. I'm not asking you to say the core teachings, I've changed my life and I'm going this way. I'm just saying empty the preconceptions out of your cup and allow new information and new thoughts, new directions to flow in. And then you make your own decision as we move forward. And we'll be talking about that as to how that works. The second one, and one of the authors that I particularly like, it's a favorite of many in the classes, an individual Vietnamese monk who practices in the south of France but does things worldwide. His monastery there is called Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh, and he has an amazing book called The Heart of Buddha's Teachings, one of the best books I've ever read. He respectfully asks everybody not only to open their mind, but to open their hearts as well too. Meaning quite literally, they are opening themselves up to the new ideas. They're opening themselves up to compassion as well too.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Was there a question back?
No, there's a comment. Thich Nhat Hanh is actually coming to St. Catherine's Rock University for a week in the summer.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Yeah, guys, if you want to go, it's a week, it's a 5-day, you know.
Yeah, no problem at all. What I would ask you to do is, if you're interested in this individual, several of his books are in the bookstore, but you can find it out. If you want the spelling or whatever, I can put it up at the end of the class. But there are alternate readings that you can do. While a lot of the books that we cover are by our own Venerable Master Sin Young, there are other authors that we look at as well too. And there are other opportunities to practice, and I will touch on those as we go forward as well too. The key is really being opening to it. Buddhism, often asked, is it a religion or is it a philosophy? Now when I lead the tours, my answer is yes it is. To me, it quite literally is a way of life, and that is, I think, how Buddhism should definitely be approached. It quite literally involves study, and it involves reflection, and it involves meditation, and we certainly need to understand if the teachings that we're hearing are relevant to us, because of course they are being taught by individuals that are out there.